Dow Jones up 240 points today. It appears that everything is going to be okay, but the devil is in the details. It's Wednesday, August 21st, 2019. First off, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure you share this video with everybody, your social media, your churches, your friends, whoever. Share this video and make sure you hit the bell notification down below so that you're alerted with the newest video. So the Dow Jones up 240 points today, but there are some major concerns here. One of these major concerns is this. We had the 2-year and 10-year invert again today. So we had another inversion with the 2-year and 10-year. I believe they're about 2 or 3 basis points apart right now, but we did have another inversion between the 10 and the 2-year. So that's very, very concerning because we know what happens historically, what precedes this inversion, and it has now happened twice. News today on Reuters, weakening demand. U.S. Steel plans to lay off hundreds of workers in Michigan because of the weakening demand of steel. We're seeing a weakening demand from the auto and farm machinery sectors. No matter how they want to manipulate these markets, no matter how much they inject these markets, they can throw the addict and inject as many drugs into the addict as they want to. But what they can't hide is what's really happening in the real economy, what's happening on Main Street, what's happening in the Midwest, what's happening to steel production, what's happening in retail, the auto sector, what's happening in real estate. They cannot hide the reality of what we're seeing take place with this economy. More news today on Zero Hedge. This is the worst I've seen it. Recession imminent as RV industry crashes. I went over this article a couple days ago. They put it back up again on Zero Hedge, and it's very, very important. This is a recession warning light that is flashing, and it is telling us we are not far off from this recession. As I've said many times, we've already begun this recession, but we're going to be 10 or 12 months into this recession by the time the Fed admits to you and I that we are in a recession. They're way behind fighting and holding off this recession. It's too late. We're in it, and they're not going to be able to stop it. Thor Industries. This is an RV company. Thor Industry commands 50% of the North American RV market. Their sales are down 23% in the fiscal third quarter. In the article here, it also says any rate cut in September is 3 quarters too late. The downturn has begun. Another article here. Money printing can't replace savings and production as real engine of economic growth. We need growth. We need production. We need to be producing things, manufacturing, making things here in America in order to have a vibrant, growing economy. What we have here is an economy of consumption. We produce debt. We consume. This is what this economy is living on. It's living on credit. It's consuming, and it's consuming more and more debt. It's not making anything. It's not producing anything. It's not manufacturing anything. We are so dependent on the rest of the world for goods. And this is really, really concerning because as we head deeper into this recession, what is going to get us out of this recession as we no longer really make anything here? All of our industries are slowing down, and most goods we now import from China or Asia, other countries. So we can talk how bad we're going to hurt China in this recession, but China holds all the gold, and China manufactures so many products throughout the world that even though they go through a global slowdown, they're going to be able to work their way out of it by producing and manufacturing goods. I don't know how America gets out of this recession, as we really don't produce anything here. We don't manufacture anything. That's very, very concerning. And we don't even know how much gold America even has. Did we sell it off? Did we pay debts off with it? Nobody knows, because nobody's seen it. So another very big concern about this recession. Remember, this Fed is running out of ammo. We're 200 basis points. That's all we have to fight this recession that has begun. And the Fed has nearly $4 trillion on its balance sheet. So how does the Fed get us out of this recession? The Fed is getting us into this recession. And once we get into it, I don't know who or what is going to get us out of it. Again, we do not make anything here. Big trouble. Here's an article on the AP. Report shows U.S. deficit to exceed $1 trillion next year. This, my friends, is unsustainable. As we get in deeper to this recession, how do we sustain these debts and deficits? We are going to be so buried with debt by the end of this recession, or in the middle of this recession. How do we get out of it? We are going to be loaded with so much debt. We're going to be just buried. We are going to be buried under a mound of debt. So again, we can blame trade wars. We can blame the president. We can blame numerous things. But at the end of the day, there's a couple things I think we need to blame. And that's the Fed itself. And that is this massive debt that these politicians that run the U.S. have absolutely indebted us with. They've turned us into slaves with all this debt. And so between the Fed and this massive debt, we have big, big trouble ahead. As we watch the media talk about the recession, we look at people like Bill Maher, who would love to see a recession take place in America to hurt this president. I mean, just look at Bill Maher, okay? I think he's worth about $100 million. A recession's not going to hurt him. He will survive it. But he doesn't care about the rest of the country that's going to really be hurt. People are going to be wiped out. People's lives are going to change abruptly when this recession really, as we really get deep into this recession. And people's lives are already changing right now as they're getting tapped out with their credit cards, as they're getting behind, they're falling behind in their car payments. They're falling behind in debt. And people like Bill Maher don't care because they want to blame this president. And so many people in the media, so many politicians, so many people in Hollywood, including Bill Maher, they're going to blame this president. And I'm sure there's going to be people on the right side also, not just the left, but the right, who are going to blame this president for this recession. I think we all need to understand that this recession, it took many, many years. In fact, it started back in 2008 and it never got handled, okay? It never got dealt with. And so it's been prolonged now, and we're going to have to deal with it at some point. And that some point is getting very, very close. But if we would have dealt with this 11 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. But it took decades of abuse to get to 2008. And then we saw a massive wealth transfer take place in 2008. We saw massive abuses, bailing out automakers, bailing out foreign banks, bailing out American banks, all by the taxpayer. So your beautiful politicians scared, the United States of America, saying we're going to have martial law tomorrow if we do not bail out these institutions. But they didn't tell you we're going to be bailing out automakers and bailing out foreign banks all over the world. So we rewarded bad behavior. These banks that made bad loans, who just committed multiple crimes, we rewarded them, bailed them out, gave the bankers big bonuses. And so here we are today. The BandAid is now coming off the gunshot wound, and now this president is going to have to deal with this mess. And the media is salivating over this because you know exactly who they're going to blame for this. Everyone needs to understand that the Federal Reserve is primarily responsible for the direction of this economy. The president knows and understands this, that the Federal Reserve has the tools to accelerate this economy, to do what it has to do to repair problems. It has the tools. And what they're doing is, I think that they're going to use and basically arm the Federal Reserve to go after this president. I believe that they're going to weaponize, that the Fed is weaponized now to go after this president. We look at like how many rate hikes did this president have compared to the last one? I think it was 7. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had 7 hikes under this president. And the problem here is the Fed kept rates way too low for way too long. And here we are now. They're behind an 8 ball. They are way behind in the curve. And now we're going to get multiple rate cuts, and they basically are chasing the economy down. I think it's too late. There's a good chance the Fed blows these markets up. They're going to blow this economy up before the 2020 election. Will this be done on purpose? There's a good chance. Many people out there have spoken about this, that the only way they can get this president is by blowing up the economy. And we are heading into a recession. We have 200 basis points, and that is not going to be enough to get us out of this recession. Let's be honest, this isn't even close to the greatest economy in our history, that's for sure. But one thing I'm going to predict here today is this will be the greatest depression that America has ever seen. And the Fed knows it's coming. And I believe that the Fed is going to be very responsible for the coming of this depression. A good article on Zero Hedge yesterday with Ron Paul. Trade war, not root cause of downturn. The Fed is. I couldn't agree more. Don't blame the trade war for the downturn. Blame the Fed. I think Ron Paul is 100% right. I'm going to paraphrase through this article really quickly for you. The Fed does not cure recessions. It creates them 100%. The Fed creates booms, bubbles, and then bursts those bubbles. The Fed misleads investors and businesses when it lowers rates. It distorts signals. Investors and businesses misjudge the true state of the economy. And he says here, the Federal Reserve is a secretive central bank with the power to influence money. The best thing Congress and the Fed can do after this bubble burst is to let the recession run its course. And that's what we should have done in 2008, but they wouldn't let that happen. And so I think this go around, they will have no choice but to let it run its course. And that's why we're going to see the most devastating economic collapse in American history. He goes on to say, but Congress and the Fed cannot resist. So Congress spends billions on wasteful economic stimulus bailouts, politically influential corporations, while the Fed primes the pump with new money creation. Starting the boom and bust cycle all over again. And here we are. All over again. And this thing is ready to go bust. And this is why it's so imperative that everybody out there be preparing. There's an article here on shtfplan.com, and make sure you are doing your due diligence. Don't listen to me. Don't believe me. Go online, confirm these stories, do your own homework. I need to stress that. There's so many people out there that too many people believe what everybody says. You really need to get involved, do your own homework, do your own due diligence, and look for yourself and read this stuff. This article is interesting. Big cities that are struggling with hepatitis, typhus, mountains of human feces, and millions of rats are all run by, well, we know who runs those. I'm going to be careful what I say here today so that you are able to see this video. But reading this article, and this is happening right here in Los Angeles, an hour and a half from my house. We have a rat epidemic, typhus epidemic. Dr. Drew talked about the Black Plague presently being somewhere in Los Angeles, measles outbreaks, you name it. We're seeing it in Los Angeles because we have 80,000 homeless people just in LA County alone. And there may be many more than that, but we have them in San Diego County, Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Los Angeles. They're everywhere. Look at San Francisco. This is an epidemic taking place. You have to ask yourself, when this collapse takes place, what are these cities going to do? What are these cities going to look like? They look like war zones right now. They look like third and fourth world countries. What is going to happen when we are deep in this collapse? And heaven forbid that we have a grid attack, a cyber attack, any kind of attack take place in America on top of this collapse. What are we going to see in our major cities here in America? I think it's very, very frightful. I think it's downright scary because I'm going to tell you right now, there are not too many people watching this video that would get out of their car and walk the streets down on Skid Row in Los Angeles in the daytime, let alone nighttime. It is a war zone. It is gang run. It is infested with disease and rats and filth. Drug addicts. It is absolutely out of the worst horror film you've ever seen. And most people would never get out of their car in broad daylight and walk down the streets in Skid Row. I can tell you that, let alone try doing it at night. These are places you do not want to be around. But what is going to happen if the lights ever go out in America? What happens if the EBT shuts down? What happens if the grid goes down? What happens when you combine all that with an economic collapse? What are these people, going to do? Are they going to start, coming towards your neighborhoods? They're going to start hitting the suburbs. But we have an epidemic in our suburbs now too. So, the Skid Row has now expanded into the suburbs. It's everywhere. And so, this is something to think about. Think about the element that you're going to be dealing with on the streets of America if things really get out of control. And this is why I not only say be your own central bank and be financially responsible for your own well-being, but have your own security in place, because the police are unfortunately not going to be there to help you. They have their own families. There's going to be so much chaos going on. They're not going to have time to deal with you. You're on your own. So it's imperative that you have security, that you are training, that you are working on your skill set, because it does not matter how many assets you have, how strong you are, because when this thing erupts, you're going to be dealing with masses of people. And if you cannot protect yourself, your family, or your assets, whether that be your food and water, your gold and silver, your house, whatever it may be, you're not going to have it very long. And heaven forbid somebody hurts your family, takes the life of a loved one, takes things that you worked so hard to buy and purchase. Nobody has that right. So I believe that you need to defend what you own. You've worked hard for it, and you owe it to your family. You have a fiduciary duty to protect your family, whether that's financially or physically. So make sure that you have security in place. There's an article here right now. I believe this was maybe in the LA Times. I forgot where this one came from. $700,000 for an apartment. Google this title. $700,000 for an apartment. The cost to solve the homeless crisis soaring in Los Angeles. Los Angeles passed a $1.2 billion bond measure back in 2016. And it projected per unit cost of apartments for the homeless at $700,000. The median price home in LA is like $650,000. Right now, they're planning on 72 new apartments with a fitness center in the heart of Koreatown. This is just how out of control our cities now are in America, building $700,000 apartments for homeless people with a fitness center. Homelessness in LA is up 16%. $700,000 apartments and fitness centers is unsustainable. This is pure craziness. But look who is running these cities. Look who is running our major cities today in America. There's nothing but a lack of progress and a waste of money taking place in our cities. And this cannot continue without huge problems rising from it. And as we continue to see America being bankrupted, as we continue to see pension funds bankrupted, Social Security bankrupted, we're going to continue, like cities like Chicago, Detroit, absolutely annihilated, bankrupted. And the same thing is happening to Los Angeles. And this is how cities across America become bankrupted. Building $700,000 apartments for homeless people. It's just unbelievable what we're witnessing. The waste of money that is transpiring throughout our cities in America. And it's going to come to an end one day, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to come to an end. What's going to happen when the masses don't have their pensions? What happens when Social Security isn't there? What happens when there's no more $700,000 apartments? What happens when this government can't afford to give you EBT? What's going to happen if your 401k gets wiped out? I'm going to wrap this video up right here, but I want you to think about this. We are about to witness the most extreme wealth transfer the world has ever seen. All this is coming to an end. And people, especially the middle class, are going to be annihilated. The middle class is going to be destroyed. It's going to be gutted more than it already has been. The poor will become more poor, and the 1% or the 0.001% at the very top are going to gobble up houses. They're going to gobble up businesses. They're going to gobble up land. You must be protecting yourself now. I can't stress it enough. As I said, I made an order last week, and I made another order this week. You need to be holding hard, tangible assets. It's the only thing monetarily that is going to protect you. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Make sure all of your preps are topped off. Make sure you have security. Make sure you're training. And make sure you are accumulating this kind of stuff right here. Do what the central banks are doing. Do what China's doing. Do what Russia's doing. Do what the ultra rich are doing. Do what the 0.0001% are doing. This is what they're stockpiling in their vaults, in their safes, in their private vaults in Switzerland. They're not putting paper there, ladies and gentlemen. They're putting solid, tangible, hard assets like gold and silver in those vaults, not paper. I'm going to leave it there today. I hope everybody has a phenomenal week. We are living in extreme times, the most exciting times. It's not a reason to panic or be worried. It's a reason to prepare. Embrace what is coming. Be prepared for it. It has begun, and it is not going to stop. It's coming. God bless every one of you. We'll talk very, very soon.